This is Rosalind Carter. In 1977, I served as the honorary chair for the President's Commission on Mental Health. 25 years later, President George W. Bush held a second commission, the President's New Freedom Commission on Mental Health. Many of the same issues and problems remain, but there is one exciting development since our first commission, and that is the hope of recovery for people with mental illnesses. As a testament to how far we've come, the following video, Recovered Dignity, documents how people who have mental illnesses, consumers of mental health services, took it upon themselves to restore the cemeteries of patients at state mental health institutions in Georgia and Hawaii. On their own, they undertook to return the dignity of these former patients, even if only in death.
This is the story of thousands of unmarked grave sites and people attempting to heal after the stigma and despair associated with mental disabilities.
The numbers are staggering. Since 1842, when Central State Hospital was established, more than 44,000 consumers have died. Some 30,000 were buried on the grounds with graves marked only with a number. The scene was shocking. The patient's cemetery was described by Joe Ingram, a 50-year Central State employee. Rows upon rows of numbered, small rusted markers as far as you can see. No names, just numbers. It must be the most gruesome sight in Georgia. Unknown humans, shunned when living, deprived of their very names in death, and literally known only to God.
The despair was amplified in March of 1997 when members of the Georgia Consumer Council toured a cemetery at Central State Hospital and were confronted with the bleak reality that many of the rows of numbered small rusted markers were choked with underbrush or had been removed altogether. Further research revealed that there were 6 neglected cemeteries on the hospital grounds with up to 30,000 people buried, making it perhaps the largest graveyard for people with disabilities in the world. Annually, there are consumer conferences being held around the country. On many of their agendas is cemetery restoration and promoting the recovery movement.
In 1997, we discovered that there were some 25,000 patients buried on the grounds of the state hospital in Milledgeville. It was a shocking event for us. Some of us wept. Some of us pledged that day that we would do something about the situation, that we would create a memorial, that we would send a message that no more could we be treated with that sort of lack of dignity.
Larry Fricks introduced Randy Hatt. Randy informed the audience of what was found in Hawaii's state hospital basement.
In the room in the basement of one of the buildings, cardboard boxes with over 600 cremated remains inside. And Hawaii is a tropical place, a tropical climate. There was no air conditioning. The boxes had mildew, and names which were inscribed on the boxes had disappeared in some of them. Over 100 were unknown. These folks had no service. They died, they were cremated, and their box remains were put into a room in the basement.
I saw that a movement for change was strengthened by recovery, by honoring consumers that came before, bestowing on them the dignity of human recognition that was taken away by the actions of those not in recovery. I think we've begun the process of making amends, but I am here today to signal the beginning of making amends through 2 approaches. One is to humbly say to you that I am sorry. I'm sorry on behalf of the state of Georgia. I'm sorry on behalf of the institutions who in the past, despite whatever intentions they may have trampled human spirits and not allowed recovery to flame. I am sorry that we've overused medications. I am sorry that we have overused intrusive measures like restraint and seclusion. Another of our moral shortcomings has been a focus on segregation, isolation, keeping consumers apart from their community. But probably the most shocking moral shortcoming that is the hardest to understand has been the trampling of human dignity, leading to the desecration of graves.
In the past, insane asylum's original goal was humane treatment, but along the way, dark atrocities scarred its history, including abuse, neglect, forced lobotomies, dangerous experimentation without consent, the use of electroshock treatment, and over-medication.
While I was in Central State, we was in the morning time when it was time for us to have ETC. They would take about 5 of us together, take us in, and there would be these, well, at the time I called them men's, but in later years I found out they was called intern. Took us into these rooms while 2 of us is being strapped to a table with, then they was put wires in our heads, in our hands, and in our foot. The rest of us would have to sit there as they shock them. And when they would be shocked, they would be flopping on the table like a fish out of water. And at times, it was eerie to sit there and see this going on and know you was the next one on the table. But at that time when I was there, I didn't know what was going on because I had to do what they told me to do. And if I didn't, I would be punished.
The movement around the country with honoring people who had been neglected and sometimes actually desecrated in their deaths helps form a new bond and relationship between the mental health system and the consumers. Fundamentally, it's a recognition of the deep problems that have occurred with people with mental illness and in our delivery of services in the United States.
This is a human rights movement that we are witnessing. It's people with mental illness coming together and demanding that the oppression and discrimination stop.
I believe one of the biggest gifts of this movement is that it's been a catalyst for a new understanding and a support for how we think about people with mental illness and how we see them as recovering people, not as lost people.
The cemetery projects around the country helped unite consumers around a powerful moral cause and help bring closure to families searching for ancestors. For consumers who had family members with mental illness, the project was very personal and helped to soothe their pain from the injustices done to their ancestors. Dr. Peter Cranford, who started the psychology department at Central State Hospital, summed it up this way: that the effort to bring recognition and dignity to 30,000 patients buried on the hospital grounds is being undertaken by those who have been mentally ill themselves is an indication of how far society has come since the early days of the hospital. We no longer waste the talents and abilities of these survivors, and this project, when completed, will stand as a monument to their determination.